I had to warm up my voice there. I'm not used to the live shows. I've been doing recorded videos, Kyle. I'm not used to the good morning grinders. Yeah, okay, I got that in. Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender at BlenderHD. You're gonna follow me on Twitter. It's Fridays in the NFL, and we'll be discussing GPP strategy today. Kyle Murray, member of what the hell do you do? Like all the projections behind the scenes. I mean, I see you always updating stuff. Are you ready for football season?
I am. Yeah, it's been a long run up. We obviously had a lot of preseason that we were working pretty hard on those projections, so that was fun. Got the gears turning for the regular season. So last night it started off pretty good. The first half was fun, and then the rain delay hit, and then that game kind of turned into a bit of a snooze fest. But yeah, it's been a long wait for football. So I'm glad it's here, and I'm excited to bask in all its glory.
I'm excited to see all your comments in the chat. Feel free to hit that thumbs up button. You know how much I like that. The thumbs. Hit the thumbs up button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Always know when we go live. We got tons of shows. Obviously NFL starts around. We had the Pick Six show on Wednesday. We got showdown shows. We got strategy shows. We got everything. So it definitely keep subscribed to the channel for the entire football season. Macro view of the week 1 slate. We've had these prices out for seemingly forever. The two things that it's hard for me to reconcile on this week 1 slate is one, we typically go in and we think we know something and we don't. So everyone is like overconfident based on preseason, based on previous seasons. We have teams that they look the same, but they've changed coaches, or they've same coaches, but they have different personnel. So maybe we shouldn't be as confident. The projections may be a bit more fragile. And then the thing I have to reconcile with is number 2, the pricing on DraftKings is soft. That you could play like 100 different players in lineups and still not be more than like 10 points off optimal. It feels as if, Kyle, that you could take this slate, and if this was week 8, like literally everyone in the player pool would be $1K more expensive, and then we'd have the slate as like normal. We'd have Jamar Chase at 9,100. We'd have Brian Thomas at 7,800. Those may look like the normal prices. We have Chase Brown at 7,600 or McCaffrey at 8,300. So then it's like, okay, where do we find some cheap value, and how do we fit these stacks in? I just feel like I've been playing around with stacks because that's what we'll be talking about on today's show. It feels like I could play I don't want to say it. It feels like play whoever I want.
Yeah, for sure. I do think there's like a little bit of an element to like a lot of the big names that people in preseason and leading up to like their season-long drafts have been like really high on taking like big steps. Like guys like Chase Brown, Brian Thomas. Obviously, these guys were all good last year, but I do think that if we see them kind of transpire the way that we think they're going to, they will be worth that price tag. But so that's kind of leads to some of the softer pricing for sure. I totally agree. Like now this week, it feels like playing a receiver who's 4-5 is like the value of the week. And there's, 2 guys who are just happen to be 2 of the most talked about guys in all of the offseason, Emeka Egbuka and Ricky Pearsall. So those guys are both going to be very popular as well. But yeah, it doesn't really feel like you necessarily need to dip down into the 3K range of some of these receivers. So, which is kind of a bummer because there are some fun names down there that I'm sure we'll get to. But you probably don't need that as much because of what you alluded to with some of these top end pricing for some of these guys who could easily be, like you said, $1,000 more expensive and it not be all that crazy.
Well, you know what we do on this show? We do everything in tiers because that's the cool thing on YouTube, right? To do tier lists. So we'll be going through all 12 games on the Sunday slate, team by team, putting them in tiers. And remember, these tiers are for DraftKings GPP, large field GPPs. You're going with the Millie Maker. FanDuel, by the way, if you don't realize, on FanDuel, even though we're not going to really talk about FanDuel, no sweat million. So if you $5 entries, any entry that doesn't cash, you get site credit back on. So like I'm it's easily it's not only no rake, it's like no risk. So this is a good time if you've never like maxed 150, feel free to go and do so. $750, especially if you're going to play for the rest of the season. Yeah, you get back site credit, but they go into the, I'm going to be using that next week. So that's perfectly fine. So I just want to remind people of that if people don't realize it. But on DraftKings, we got the Millie Maker as usual. And we rank stacks. Remember, these are stacks. So not just single players. So they get headed by a quarterback with multiple pass catchers or running backs or anything, game stacks, things like that. And they're adjusted to ownership. So although there may be some games that may be popular, maybe we think they're a little too popular. Maybe they're over-owned, right? And then there may be some stacks that look a little bit ugly, but they're going to be so under-owned that maybe they have upside to win the Millie Maker. And Kyle, we know the names that win Millie Makers. A lot of times the quarterback that's in that slot is like, wow, I can't believe, Daniel Jones won multiple Millie Makers. Joe Flacco has won multiple Millie Makers. So it's not necessarily that you need to play like the top plays on the entire slate. Sometimes an 18-point quarterback is good enough.
Yep. Yeah, especially when you talk about some of the low-owned pass catchers. And I think the big thing is like in week one, a lot of these games, there's going to be some games that people are expecting high, point totals for that will be letdowns. But, I think that's the biggest thing with week one. I feel like sometimes we see production sort of slide a little bit at the beginning of the season. But that kind of opens up the field for some of these lower end quarterbacks and some of their pass catchers. So it can definitely be some gross names. I will say I've been kind of calling out Daniel Jones for the past maybe month or two in our Slack about just this Miami secondary. And if this is a spot where he's going to be low owned, I do like Daniel Jones, but I think he might actually get some ownership this week. So we'll be interesting to dive into that.
Okay, let's get to our first game. I'm just going in the order that we have it in lineup HQ here at RotoGrinders. And I guess we could. This is going to be a cheap quarterback. Let's talk about the Raiders at the Patriots. Raiders with a 21-point implied team total. Patriots with a 23.5 implied point team total. Drake May, 5,500. It's the past 2 or 3 years doing the show. Patriots having a 23.5 implied team total is like, typically I'm used to seeing that in under 20, right?
Yeah.
A lot of time. I mean, we don't really have that many like standout games. A lot of games, we're talking about like these totals. There's no like 58-point total game or anything like that. Drake May, who is potentially a more of a rushing quarterback, depends on what we see this year. The Patriots, obviously people are in the best ball love Trevion Henderson. I don't necessarily think I don't think you're playing him at 5,500 this week at least. You got Steph Diggs there. You got Hunter Henry on the other side. You got Geno Smith. Probably the Raiders' offense will be a little bit more effective. They got Ashton Genty at 7K. I think he's more of a play on FanDuel than on DraftKings. Obviously, Brock Bowers. Jacoby Myers, I don't think wants to play there anymore, but he's still there. I don't think this game is going to really be that owned on DraftKings, at least. What are your thoughts on playing? It feels like I know where the ball's going in this game.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it should be a pretty low-owned game stack. Obviously, we're going to see some ownership for Genty with the hype that he has, and I do still think he's going to be a pretty high floor running back who sees a lot of touches. I think I certainly, like you mentioned, prefer him on FanDuel. He's cheaper. I think the scoring also benefits him more on FanDuel. And then Bowers is also going to always have ownership, right, with what he did last year and just being that kind of de facto spend up tight end this year. But other than that, there's not going to be a ton of ownership going around. I will say I agree on Drake May. I think we're going to see him run the ball more. We've seen some pretty wild comparisons for people about Drake May, comparing him to, this is kind of the Josh Allen career path. That would obviously be the nut outcome for Drake May to turn into Josh Allen. But I think you nailed it when you said, you kind of know where the ball's going. Stephon Diggs is likely going to be the alpha guy here. There have been some rumors about him potentially having some snap count limitations in week one. He says he wants to be full go. Obviously, he's going to say that. I don't think he would say anything else. But nonetheless, that is at least something to slightly consider if you're considering a Patriot stack here. For me personally, I like smaller stacks here for the Patriots. So this would be probably a mid-tier stack for me. And then on the other side for the Raiders, obviously a lot of turnover, new coaching regime, new quarterback, a couple new receivers, new running back. The Raiders I'm not super interested in as a full stack, but I can get behind, the Geno Smith to either one of Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, and then Dante Thornton. Obviously, yesterday we saw Amari Cooper retire, somewhat surprisingly. Maybe not like the biggest surprise in the world, considering it was probably more of a surprise that he got signed again. But Thornton is one of these guys that I kind of mentioned and alluded to earlier, where he would be a guy who's perfect for like a slate where the pricing is difficult and you need some value. 3.6 for a guy who's going to start. He could easily turn into a guy who doesn't earn a ton of volume consistently, but he's going to have big play upside. He's 6'5", runs a 4.3 40. So Thornton, I don't mind the stack in bigger field stuff with Geno Smith, one of Bowers and Myers. Probably prefer Bowers, and then Thornton there at 3.6. I don't mind that sort of stack here for the Raiders.
Yeah, according to our Sims tool, we got basically, let's take a look. Geno Smith stack, about 2% chance of being optimal. And then Drake May, almost 5% chance of being optimal. Drake May, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth highest on the slate. So I'm down with putting the Patriots in, I mean, B or C. I mean, naturally, based on our Sims, it would be C. But if the ownership's not going to be there, I almost want to push the Patriots up to B. May plus Diggs plus Henry seems like a cheap way that if they get there, it's easy to just fit in like really high projection pieces on the rest of your lineup. So I don't know if you're down for B or C.
Yeah, I would probably prefer C. I do see your point with the lower ownership to maybe put them up to B. But I think naturally I would prefer C a bit, just because I still think some of the pass catching options aren't super high ceiling guys, at least at least for this week. I think Henderson's actually an interesting stacking component with Drake May, because I think where he'll be most valuable in this Patriots offense is as a pass catcher. So I think that's also a guy worth noting in a stack with May.
And Henderson's 4,700 on FanDuel. So if you're gonna play him, you probably want to play him on FanDuel, because FanDuel pricing, some of the wide receiver pricing is actually like efficient, and then just like random people. Ashton Genty's 6,400. Right. Anytime you see someone that's cheaper on FanDuel than on DraftKings, typically that means you're probably playing them on FanDuel, right? Because it's supposed to be the other way around. Let's get to the next game. Going to be a popular one. It's the Panthers at the Jaguars. Panthers 21.5 point implied team total. Jacksonville 25 point implied team total. I don't know. You could have told me this last year, and I would think that you'd like. Some people would think you're nuts. I played him more often than other people. That Trevor Lawrence may be one of the most owned quarterbacks on the entire slate. We have him and the Jacksonville stack as the most likely to be optimal at almost 20%, which is pretty damn high for a 12-game slate. But he's also going to be owned, and basically everyone is going to be owned. So Lawrence is going to be owned. Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be probably 20+% owned. You're going to get Bretton Strange as a cheap tight end, probably going to be owned. And then on the other side, Ted McMillan is going to be pushing 20% ownership also on the other side. Everyone else, Jatavian Sanders, I guess, will get some cheap tight end ownership. My take on this game may be a little bit different to yours, but what do you think about playing the Jaguars into chalk ownership?
I think you can do it in a unique way, because I do think there is some spots where, again, like you kind of alluded to it leading up to the show, where you're leaning into some of that potential volatility of people just not knowing what week one is going to transpire. Like, yes, everyone agrees that and thinks that Brian Thompson is going to have a great year and be a wide receiver one, but what if Travis Hunter is a guy who just carves out more of a role than people are expecting? Like right now, in our projections, we have Travis Hunter for about an 18-19% target share. That gets Brian Thomas about 26-27% target share. I think there's upside for Brian Thomas to carve out more of that target share in this offense, but I also know there is maybe some volatility week over week with Travis Hunter maybe having big games. So I certainly think there are unique ways that you can stack Trevor Lawrence, who I do think is a good play. This Carolina defense was bad last year. expecting them to be bad once again. I do think Liam Cohen's going to come in and take the Jags, another step further. So maybe stacking without Brian Thomas, which is always a risky proposition, but there are plenty of other high ceiling receivers in other games that you could use to kind of fill that price gap, and then use some of these cheaper Jacksonville pass catching options, Travis Hunter and Brenton Strange, Brenton Strange was a pretty high ceiling tight end last year in those final 4 games. He had 2 games of over 60 yards. And, I know that's a stretch for saying high ceiling, but, for a guy who's 3-3 at the tight end position, that's typically a weak position. He at least has shown a ceiling at that position. So Strange and Hunter to pair with Trevor Lawrence, and then maybe fade a chalky Brian Thomas to get, just a little bit unique. I think that's a good way to at least build around some of this chalkiness, because I do think it's a good spot for them. But again, there is a lot of volatility in this spot, not only because it's week 1 and there's a new coach, new system, but also because it's still the Jags, right? I know it's a good matchup, but Trevor Lawrence has definitely been a volatile quarterback at times. We've seen the ceiling, we've seen the very significant floor. So I think that's definitely something to consider ownership wise. I think if they weren't popular, they'd be a fantastic play, but it kind of seems like everybody's understanding that they're in a pretty good spot this week.
Right. That's why I put them in the B. I mean, by projection and by optimal rate in our sims, they would be A. But I mean, do you really trust the Jaguars to be, into owner? Like, I don't care if they're chalked. It's like there's some teams. It's like, okay, I don't mind if they're chalked because they're obviously the best team.
Yeah.
They're the Jaguars. Here's my take. Here's a unique way of playing this game, and it's probably a unique way that you would never expect to consider, because it's kind of a trick question. I actually prefer to play the other side. Play Bryce Young and play Bryce Young as a triple stack, and then play no Jaguars.
Okay.
So playing, because Adam Thielen's gone, right? I mean, we don't care about him anymore. I mean, like it feels to me as if you could play Bryce Young at 5,700, you could play Tet McMillan at 5,200. You can play Xavier Legette at 4,200, and you can play Jatavian Sanders at 2,900. And other than Chuba Hubbard, basically Bryce Young throws for 300 yards. I mean, it seems like the target share is kind of condensed here. I know you got Hunter Renfrow in there, but he's what? He's going to just be laying, or he's the wide receiver version of Zach Ertz, right? I mean, he doesn't go anywhere. And hope that this game this ends up being, a 28-24 type of game. And then just the offense on the other side just gets spread out. So Brian Thomas Jr. has 20 points, but it's not like you need it, right?
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence has 20 points, but it's not like you need it, right? Yeah. You have Brenton Strange gets 8 points, 10 points. The Jacksonville Jaguars put up where you're happy with the points, but it's not like a GPP winning score. So I just think the Carolina side is much more valuable. Now, I don't mind the run backs or anything. It feels like if I think the Panthers may be better, or possibly significantly better this year than they were last year. The defense still probably sucks. So they're probably going to have to put up points. And I don't think Bryce Young is as bad as people think that he's. I mean, we saw at the end of the year that he really wasn't that bad. And Tet McMillan is going to be owned, but I mean, is anyone in Carolina really going to be owned? If everyone's playing the Jaguars, but no one's really playing the Panthers. So many people are going to do this. Lawrence, Brian Thomas Jr., Brenton Strange with a Tet McMillan run back. That's going to be the game stack of that. And I'm just how do I play this differently without playing Tank Bigsby or Travis Etienne or Chuba Hubbard? I don't mind Chuba Hubbard at 6K, but we have 10 running backs from 6K to 7,500 that are interchangeable, that project way more than Hubbard, that I'd rather mix and match those guys in. So it's how do I play this? Are you on board with the Panthers, or am I crazy?
No, I love the Panthers this week. They're one of my favorite contrarian stacks as well. I will say you kind of dismiss the running backs. I actually like the running backs a little bit here this week, just because I think that everyone's going to be on every other spot. Everyone is so invested in this game in such a significant way, and nobody is even looking at running backs. And I know Hubbard, he's in a price range that does make it tough, but again, that's why you get lower ownership with him. I mean, Hubbard was a guy who was legit handling a top 5 to 7 workload in the NFL last year, and now we're expecting him to be in a better offense in a great matchup against the Jags. So I like Hubbard quite a bit this week. I will say there were some reports, the Panthers came out and they were pretty clear they don't want to quote unquote run him dry early on in the season. I mean, that probably sounds like they're going to take it easy on him. They obviously went out and got Rico Dowdle. They have the ability to not give him 25 touches, but he could get 17, 18 touches, score a couple times, and get there. I do agree. Like, I still prefer some of the pass catching options for Carolina a bit more than Hubbard. Like, I do like Tet more than Chuba Hubbard, but so does everybody else. I mean, 18% ownership for Tet right now, 5% for Chuba, and I get the positional opportunity cost is a lot different, but I still think Hubbard makes a good kind of comeback play in some Jacksonville stacks. And then on the other side, if you're stacking Bryce Young and you're going with Leggett and Tet McMillan, or if you're going with even just two of those guys, I know you mentioned the triple stack with Bryce Young, but even if you want to go with two of Tet, Leggett, and Jatavian Sanders, who I do think for what's worth, Sanders might get a little bit of steam as well. He's been pretty popping in our models, in our projection models, and seeing him on Twitter quite a bit. So maybe he gets a little bit of ownership that we're uncomfortable with, but nonetheless, I still think he's a value play with some of the situations there with Thielen getting traded away and Jalen Coker being out. But I don't mind bringing it back with Tank Bigsby either. I mean, that is probably the all-time ugly play of the week for me, 4-6 for Tank Bigsby, but it feels so much like what we saw last night with Dallas, where Jadon Blue is going to come in and have this role right away. Same thing with Bashal Tutin here for Jacksonville. Obviously, I'm not banking on Tutin being inactive, but I think if we're looking for a running back to come in and have a role where he gets 12 plus carries, Bigsby is the guy in this offense, at least early in the season, and it's a great matchup against Carolina. I do not hate the idea of seeing him fall in the end zone 2 times at 4-6, and everyone's like upset that it's not Brian Thomas. And Bigsby ends up being one of the better value plays at 4-6. I love Tank Bigsby in tournaments. And you could also, if you play Bryce Young with McMillan and Leggett, you can still play Tank Bigsby and Brian Thomas on the other side, and you're okay with playing Brian Thomas and Tank McMillan because yes, those two are popular, but the rest of your stacks, the rest of your pieces in this game are just so unowned. They're all 5% or less. So you can still play those top 2 receivers and get unique. Obviously, that's a big game stack, so you need a lot of points there. But ownership-wise, I think you're totally fine doing that.
Well, let's talk about the next game, which I don't expect a lot of points. We may be quick on this one. It's the Cardinals at the Saints. Cardinals 25-point implied team total. Saints 18.5-point implied team total. Can you play Kyler plus Harrison plus McBride? You can. I just don't think you're necessarily getting a salary savings on this type of stack. One-offs? Can you play Connor? Sure, I'm going to be playing a lot of Connor, especially on DraftKings more than FanDuel. Can you play Olave as a flyer? Can you play Kamara as a flyer? I just think the Saints offense with Spencer Rattler at quarterback is just not good. I don't think this game isn't over. I think it's much more likely the Cardinals are like, how do we beat the Saints as quickly as possible and as easy as possible? And I think that comes with 25 to 28 James Conner touches. Yeah. And next thing, and even if there is scoring in this game, this is going to be one of the first games that on Red Zone is like the game's over. And we still got in the fourth quarter of all these other games. I don't know. I just automatically put the Saints, the Rattler, Juwan Johnson, Chris Olave stack, I think is an F tier. Is there a reason to play the Saints here? And I don't think the Cardinals are that much better. Maybe you could play a skinny and just hope Kyler runs for 2 touchdowns. But I'm not even sure if he's going to need to do that.
Yeah, there's really no reason to play the Saints. I think that's a tough sell. Rattler, averaged 5.5 yards per attempt in his 7 or 8 games last year. So I have no interest there. It's even hard for me to get behind playing any of these Saints on their own. Maybe Olave. But for the Cardinals, James Conner, I think is a good one-off. I think he's in a great spot, going to handle the ball a ton, and it's going to be a good matchup for him. And then Arizona, the only stack I can really get behind is Kyler to maybe one of these pass catchers. MHJ is at a pretty good price, 5.5, if you are a believer that he can take that big step forward, but it's not necessarily a stack that I can bang the table for. I'm not super happy with that one.
Yeah, Kyler Murray in our optimal stack percentage tool, which comes from SimLabs, a little over 2% chance of being optimal. Spencer Rattler, 0.36%. That tells you anything when it comes to the optimal stack percentage. And you wonder, why didn't we talk that much about this game? Because that's why you see it in the D and the F tier. But here's a game that we should be talking about. It features the team with the highest implied team total. It's the Bengals at the Browns. Bengals 27-point implied team total. Browns 21.5-point implied team total. I'm assuming there's another game that's going to be popular. All the Bengals are popular. Njoku is going to be probably the second highest owned tight end. I think Jerry Jeudy's still going to be about 10% owned at 5,400. People, I've heard on other shows people talking about playing Flacco stacks. Chase Brown and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, all these guys are projected to be, and especially Chase and Brown. And Burrow's probably going to be the third highest owned quarterback on the slate. Is this like, to me, that the Bengals are not like the Jaguars. Like, I trust the Bengals offense. So, like, if they're going to be owned, you can make the case that they're an 8-tier stack regardless. I mean, when do you go wrong with Burrow double? I mean, like, to me, it's like death taxes and Burrow doubles. Typically have the highest ceiling on the entire slate. I mean, are we just playing the Bengals into ownership as an 8-tier stack?
Yeah, I actually like this game stack quite a bit. So I have no problem with this, especially because you have so many different options. I will say, like, the Gesicki play feels a little bit more thin than it did last year when he was so good at times, especially in tournaments last year. But T. Higgins, obviously back, he was averaging over 19 DraftKings points per game in the games. He was healthy last year. Chase Brown looks like a dual threat guy, so you can easily stack him as well. But Joe Burrow, and yeah, sure, you might get a little bit of an unlucky run out if Chase Brown runs in for 2 or 3 touchdowns, but he could also easily catch one and have 100 yards rushing, and Joe Burrow can throw 4 total touchdowns. So, yeah, I think this is a pretty good spot for the Bengals stack. I think the only downside really is that there's not a ton of unique ways to do it with just them, so you have to get unique with a run back on the Bengals side, or just throughout the rest of your lineup. But I think that's the only real downside here.
How about the Flacco stuff on the other side? Because I mean, we'll talk about another. I mean, we talked about Drake May. Like, I feels like I'd rather play Drake May, or I'd rather play the game that's coming up with the cheap quarterback. It's not like the Browns are good, and
yeah,
like I don't want to play. I don't want to play these. Like, there's a difference between playing like a vomit stack when it's low owned, but like Flacco. Our optimal tool says 4% chance of being optimal. So, like, I mean, in the top third, Burrow at 8%. It feels like this is a Thanksgiving slate type of scenario where if I'm going to play the Flacco stack, if I'm going to play Flacco, Jeudy, and Njoku, I'm playing it with Chase Brown and a Bengals wide receiver as a run back also, so that if this just game explodes, I have like 5 or 6 pieces of it, rather than people that are typically playing the 3-man stack plus 1 run back, or the 3-man stack alone. Like, I just kind of like, this game just is 38-31.
Yeah.
And you don't need any other game because everyone went off in the same game. I feel like that's the best way to build a Flacco stack. And I think it's C tier. I mean, it could be B tier, but I'm not going to play the Browns into ownership. It just becomes like I'd rather play the Panthers than the Browns.
Yeah, I think the Browns do get a little bit elevated just because they are, so that you get to play them with some of these top end Bengals players, right? In a game stack, like Jamar Chase looks so good, Chase Brown looks so good, and Njoku's showing up, 13% ownership. That's quite a bit. Jeudy at 9%. I can also see that number dropping a bit. I mean, that's like in the same price that McMillan is in. You have Pearsall, Abuka a little bit cheaper. So Jerry Jeudy might actually be a little bit lower. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like 5, 6, 7%. And Jerry Jeudy, I mean, we've seen the ceiling for Jeudy, especially when he's not playing with Deshaun Watson. So I think it's certainly there. Jerome Ford, I think, is a very good play, especially if you're doing a Bengals stack. Probably don't love pairing him with Joe Flacco. We've seen some receiving upside for Jerome Ford, but not a ton. So I think there's some pretty good plays here. So I wouldn't mind either C or B tier for the Browns.
Yeah, it feels like we've been talking about, halfway through the show, we've barely gotten through some games, but trust me, once we get to the back end of this, there'll be some games that we just go whip, whip, and we're done.
Yeah.
But this next one isn't one of them. It's the Dolphins at the Colts inside the Dome. Dolphins 23-point implied team total. Colts 24.5-point implied team total. We mentioned before Daniel Jones, a Russian quarterback, 5,100, taking over for Anthony Richardson, someone that actually can throw the ball. I'm not saying that he throws the ball well, but I mean probably better than Anthony Richardson. The problem with the Colts, though, is that what wide receiver? I mean, we've seen this team with Flacco at quarterback, right? We've seen this team with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Like, you got Josh Downs at 4,600, Pittman 4,900, Alec Pierce 4,400. You got Ad Mitchell at 3,400. You got obviously Warren, the rookie at tight end, at 4,400. It feels like, I don't know. I'm assuming at some point Jones is going to have his favorite target, but I don't know who the hell that's going to be. Yeah. And then you got Jonathan Taylor there at 6,800. I feel like Jonathan Taylor is one of the 6K running backs that may be lesser owned than the top four, and that's kind of the range I want to stay in. And then on the Miami side, we got Achane, who's coming off he says he's 100%. We got Tyreek Hill. Is he washed? I don't know. 67. We may be looking at the $6,700 price tag and go, why wasn't he $9,200 this week? Or we may be thinking, why wasn't he $4,200 this week? We don't know. Jalen Waddle probably a little bit more safe on the Dolphins side. Even though the Dolphins, it seems like this offseason just like the defense. See, the thing is that this is a game of the Dolphins defense, #bad. The Colts defense, supposedly better, but still probably bad. This could be a game in the Dome that I mean, if you told me this game was 40-37, I wouldn't call it surprising, right? I mean, you got all the pieces here. Jonathan Taylor could rush for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill could 150 yards and 3 touchdown type of game. I mean, Achane catches all these balls out of the backfield. I mean, all of these guys are explosive players, and like when it comes down to it, I'm looking for more explosive players with higher ceilings. I'd rather take a shot on them than the guys that are like 6K and they'll go 5 for 80 for a touchdown a lot, but like nothing more than that. So what are your thoughts on this game, and how would you play it? Because it doesn't seem like that many people are owned in this game, other than Jones, I guess, at quarterback, and then Achane and Taylor, but none of the receivers.
Yeah, I think if Hill and Waddle are both going to be single-digit ownership, that is 2 of the best tournament plays of the week at the receiver position. I mean, this is just an ideal spot for them. I mean, Tyreek Hill, obviously, potentially, getting older, but how effective can he continue to be? And I know defenses are learning how to play this Dolphins team, but when you look at vacated targets, taking Jonnu Smith out of the equation, and then obviously we thought we were going to have Darren Waller, who would take up some of those Jonnu Smith targets, but Darren Waller is not going to play this week either now. I mean, they're going to throw the ball to 3 people pretty consistently. It's going to be Achane, Hill, and Jalen Waddle, and that's pretty much it. I mean, this is just a great spot volume-wise for these guys inside the Dome, like you mentioned, against a Colts defense that was pretty lackluster last year. They have some inexperienced guys on the outside as well, so I think this is a spot where I do think the Colts defense will be better than they were last year, but I also think that the Dolphins, when Tua is healthy and when they're on, I think that they can put up production, especially fantasy production, against any defense. Because they can just make plays in such big explosive ways. So I do like the Dolphins quite a bit here. And then on the other side, I mean, this game, I bet the over on this game. I think back in July, whenever the line first released, this is just a smash spot for the Colts. I think the only difficult portion of the game is deciding who the ball is going to actually go to. But this secondary for the Dolphins is so bad. They had obviously traded away Jalen Ramsey. They dealt with 3 or 4 significant injuries to where their corners are going to be out for either the whole year or the majority of the season. So they're down to some of the last legs of their depth. They're pulling guys out of the woodwork to play corner and safety for them. So it's gonna be pretty tough. Obviously, they have Minkah Fitzpatrick back there. They got him in the Jalen Ramsey trade, but he wasn't very good last year, so he's pretty much gonna have to hold it down for this Dolphins team, and I'm not really too high on that. So I love the Colts in this spot. Obviously, yes, it is difficult to nail down who the top target's going to be. I'd put my chips in on Tyler Warren and Josh Downs. I love Tyler Warren. I think he's going to be the kind of the Brock Bowers of this season, where he's that rookie tight end that really breaks out. And I think Daniel Jones is a guy who, when we saw Anthony Richardson, he would just have no hesitation to just chuck the ball 60 yards down the field. That's great for a guy like Alec Pierce. Daniel Jones, a little bit of a different player. He's going to look for the intermediate routes, to check downs a little bit more. That's why I think that benefits guys like Tyler Warren and Josh Downs. Pittman's also not like a down the field guy either, so I think it does kind of put him into the equation as well. But I'll bet on Tyler Warren and Josh Downs a little bit more in week 1. But yeah, I love this game stack here.
I even think that, I mean, I'm putting the Colts in C only because it's just hard to stack. Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, all these guys are going to be lower owned, so that's great. But I mean, it's just still tough to stack. I'm putting Dolphins in the A because based on this ownership, I mean, when you could get Tyreek Hill for less than 10% owned and Waddle for just boom or bust, right?
Yep.
But low owned, that's exactly what I want. I don't mind if you play the Colts with just Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor, and that's it. Maybe if you put Warren in to fill a tight end spot, because to me, I think Jonathan Taylor benefits the most with Daniel Jones because, as we saw in the Giants, Daniel Jones has no problem dumping off to Saquon Barkley a ton for the Giants when their receiving crew had no one on it. Anthony Richardson never looked. I mean, Anthony Richardson barely looked at his receivers to begin with, regardless of who they were. I just think that Jonathan Taylor has a lot more pass catching upside with Daniel Jones there, that you can play them both. It's quite possible the Colts score 5 touchdowns and none of the receivers get any of them, right? That it could be Jonathan Taylor, 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns. It could be that type of game, and you don't even need any of the receivers.
We could even see a Tyler Warren rushing touchdown.
What was that?
We could even see a Tyler Warren rushing touchdown. He did it several times in college, and I wouldn't be surprised if they use him in some unique ways. So yeah, it could be definitely some funky things happening that could potentially pull away from the consistency of a stack here. So I totally agree with your point on the stacking asset of the Colts.
Next game, we got the Giants at the Commanders. Giants 20-point implied team total. Commanders 25.5-point implied team total. Top quarterback in raw points on the slate, Jaden Daniels, 7K. The main thing when it comes to now with the Commanders, I mean, it's always been the same way with Jaden Daniels, is that he rushes the ball a bunch. He steals a bunch of points from other players on his team, and you're not exactly sure who to stack him with. You got Terry McLaurin there at 6,200. Now you got Debo at 5,200. You still got guys like, the corpse of Zach Ertz around. Obviously, Eckler's going to catch some balls out of the backfield because, we know Brian Robinson Jr. is gone, but who knows what the backfield is going to look like for them. They have a high implied team total. I just feel this. First off, I think the Giants defense is going to be one of the best in the league this year. I'm not saying that the Commanders won't win. I just don't know if this is the best game for a ceiling output for the Commanders. And I think Daniels could be the highest scoring quarterback and just not at 7K, just not be a score that you need. It scores 26 fantasy points and yay, you got it at 7K, and that's no big deal. To me, on the Commanders, the most interesting guy is Deebo Samuel, because I almost think that they'll use him similarly. They got rid of Brian Robinson Jr. Deebo Samuel could rush the ball, and they could design plays very similar to when they used to have Curtis Samuel, but Deebo, I think, is better. I'm not all that thrilled about playing the Commanders as a stack, but they do have a 25-point implied team total. I mean, where would you put the Commanders and how would you use them?
I would probably put them in the C tier just because I do think they still have a good amount of upside, but I like the stacking aspect of them. I'm not in love with. I mean, like you mentioned, Jaden Daniels at 7K, you could easily put up like if he scores his projection at 23, we could easily have 4 or 5 guys in the 5K range who match that or maybe even exceed that. So I think there's a spot where that's the case with Daniels, and then like you mentioned, I think the Giants defense is going to be much improved. The total in this game, or the spread in this game, has been very interesting. I think it opened at 7 or 7.5, and it's just fallen down to 5.5 for the Commanders. So there's some definitely reason to at least have some question marks about how close this game can be, and I think that would come with the maybe lack of offensive production from the Commanders. Obviously, Terry McLaurin missed a large portion of the offseason with the holdout. Debo Samuel, funny enough, Cliff Kingsbury was telling us all about how probably wouldn't be the same kind of usage as in San Francisco. And then first play of preseason, he gets like a handoff end around and he takes for like 20 yards. So I like the Debo call as well. I think that they're going to use him in a creative way, especially because the running back room seems like such a mess here for Washington. So yeah, I'd probably put them in the C tier.
Giants, is it just skinny stack, Russell Wilson, Malik Neighbors, and just you done?
Yeah, I mean, I I don't mind neighbors here. I think but that's just even tough to get to for me, just because I think that there are better quarterback options at the 5K and then in that 5K range, and then even at the neighbors price, there are some receivers I would prefer there this week. But yeah, if you were going to utilize any Giants, that's pretty much it for me.
The most important question about this game is if Krosky Merritt is more than 5% owned, are those the people that pay the rake?
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's just so many question marks there. I actually think it's gotten to a point to where it might even like reverse course now, to where people are overreacting to it. It is kind
All
of
I
a
know is the best ball people. All I know the best ball people are making fun
yeah,
like we don't like, why is this guy going in the 4th round, 5th round of
yeah,
drafts or whatever? And I'm like, well, he's 4K on DraftKings. We have it
yeah,
projected for like 2% ownership.
yeah,
I mean, his props are like nothing. Like
yeah.
why would you be playing him?
Yeah, I mean, even in projections, we have Rodriguez leading the way in terms of rushing share and goal line work, and then obviously we have Austin Eckler playing the most, mostly because of receiving play. I think Daniels has a real. I think he's probably the favorite to lead this team in rush attempts, which I think goes to say that Jaden Daniels is probably even better in like single entry, small field stuff. Maybe not the cash game quarterback, but that sort of type play. Maybe not necessarily stacking and large field stuff. But yeah, after all preseason, all offseason, everyone was talking about how JCM was, this great prospect and going to have this great role. And then Brian Robinson gets traded away. And then he's going in the 3rd and 4th round in some drafts. And then the same people who were like, oh, he was so good in these late round picks, now he's all of a sudden not going to be involved or whatever. So I think the dramatics of the reaction, I think, are just very polarizing. But I do think, yeah, it's tough to anticipate a big role, at least in week 1.
Okay, next game is going to be the quickest game. Okay, it
Yes.
features 2 stacks that, according to our sim tool, one has a 0.4% chance of being optimal, and one is the lowest at 0.17% chance of being optimal. It's the lowest total on the slate. It is the Steelers at the Jets. Steelers 20.25 implied team total. Jets 17.25 implied team total. I mean, I can I play DK Metcalf or Garrett Wilson as like a one-off? Jalen Warren at 5,200 is like, I think the defenses are fine. Is there any reason to play any as a stack? Like, I look at this as a stack and I go, Rodgers, Metcalf, Fryermuth, or the Fields, Wilson, Mason Taylor. I'm like, not on this slate. I mean, on the slate where you have like infinite salary.
Yeah.
These guys aren't even priced. I mean, it's just like these guys are priced like almost a little too expensive on a slate where other people are way too cheap. And this is the lowest total game. And I just think these offenses are just going to be kind of crappy.
Yeah, I think you can go as far as say that you're just not playing anybody in this game at all. I mean, it's the only game with a total that isn't in the 40s. It's at 37.5. It's preseason level production is what we're expecting. So, yeah, the only thing I could potentially get behind is just maybe people are expecting DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers to not be as good as they potentially could be, and that's like the mini stack. But even then, I just don't see a ceiling there. So, yeah, just not playing anybody from this game really.
I think if I had to choose between the Jets and the Steelers, I would choose the Jets only because I think Justin Fields has more upside than Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers. Right.
Yep,
So
that's fair.
Okay, here's a game that should be popular. It's the Buccaneers at the Falcons. The Bucs 24-point implied team total. The Falcons 22.5-point implied team total. It's going to feature. I mean, you have him here at about 15% ownership. Emeka Egbuka with Chris Godwin out at 4,600. His props are like in like the high 50s with 5.5. I mean, receptions. I think it's going to be double this.
Yeah.
Which also means like Baker Mayfield at 6,600 is not a steal or anything like that. I think this will drive up. Like Mike Evans is going to be owned at 6,600. Like this whole game is kind of going to be owned. Drake London, to me, I think Drake London at 65. I think there'll be a time this season where Drake London is almost 9K. Just the way that the Falcons are going to play their offense with Penix at quarterback. And Mooney may be out. And who else are they going to throw the ball to on the Falcons? You tell me how you're going to play this game. Are you going to play a Mayfield stack with? Is the way to play Egbuka uniquely by just building him into a stack rather than playing him as a one-off?
Yeah, I think the public is probably going to play this game in a pretty heavy way, especially these three receivers, but just without quarterbacks. So I think the best way to get unique in this game is to use those quarterbacks. And I do agree, like with why the ownership is lower on these quarterbacks is because I do like other quarterbacks more than these guys. But for the sake of getting contrarian, if we think that this game's going to pop off and be significant for fantasy production, why would the quarterbacks not also benefit, especially if you're playing both Abuka and Mike Evans in such a big way? And like that's what the public is doing. So why wouldn't Baker? Like how are Abuka and Evans both going to get there in such a way that we're kind of expecting to with these ownership numbers? And I do agree the Abuka number is going to come up. It was 19% yesterday. He got like a slight bump down in projection because we bumped up K Dot in a bit, who was we had him limited. Sound like he's going to be mostly fine to go. So the ownership number is going to get reworked there. It'll certainly come up, certainly into the 20s for Abuka. But yeah, I think the best way to do that is just to use Baker in those stacks. And the same thing with Penix. It's the same exact argument. Everyone's going to play Drake London, rightfully so. 6.5, I think, is too cheap for a guy who could potentially walk away from this week with the most targets in the NFL. And they're playing in a dome. And I think it's just a smash spot for everyone, around the block in this game. So yeah, I think just loading up with the quarterbacks is going to allow you to get a bit more unique, or just by using some of these running backs. And Bucky Irving and Bijan, you can both play with the quarterback because both of these guys do have receiving upside. They have big play upside. So if Bucky Irving breaks off a 50-yard run, you're still getting another drive probably back in return with that quick play. So there's plenty of ways to stack with the running backs and the quarterbacks to get unique in this game.
Like, especially if Mooney's out. I mean, the Falcons, I mean, you could essentially play Penix, Bijan, London, Pitts.
Yeah.
And like have like 90% of the entire offense. And if Falcons put up 28 plus points, you're done. You're there. But I also think as a leverage spot, if you're not playing Ibuka, if you're not playing London, like just play Bucky Irving as a one-off. Just play Bijan as a one-off. Just like, these teams score a lot of points. It's just all on the ground, right? And then the game goes off, but Bijan has 130 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns. Or Bucky Irving could do essentially the same thing. I'm not saying to play them both together in the same lineup, but both these running backs are not going to be. I mean, this is the range of running back that's not going to be popular because a lot of people are going to be playing McCaffrey or Achane in like this range rather than 8K for Bijan or 7,100 for Irving. So I think these running backs are contrarian options. And this is the reason, Jonathan Taylor, like this is the reason why I'm not a big fan of like the Tank Bigsby types of plays on this slate because I just think you don't need those. I mean, there's just so many other options at running back that aren't chalky that there's so many options at wide receiver that aren't chalky. It feels like there's enough players on the slate that are 5 to 10% owned that project 2 points less than the popular plays that like, I just don't feel like I need to like drop down that low in order to play anyone. Now, week 8, different story.
Yeah, I would agree. I will say though, the Bucky Irving price tag, he's just above that big group of 6K guys that are all getting so much ownership. So if you're not playing anybody in this game, like let's say you're doing a different game stack, Bucky Irving could be a first click for running backs just because he's going to be probably sub 10 to 12% owned, and he's just a couple $100 more over that 6K range, and I do think he has equal upside.
Next game, we got the 49ers. This is now we're getting to our late games. Yep. I'm not sure if there's going to be any late night hammers, but we'll see. The 49ers at the Seahawks. 49ers 22.5 point implied team total. Seahawks 21 point implied team total. If you look at the blitz, I believe this is the slowest paced game on the slate. McCaffrey's 7,300. But, I mean, we're talking about stacks here. So we got Brock Purdy stacks. We got Sam Darnold stacks. I think at some point in the season, a Sam Darnold stack is going to be, like, optimal. There's going to be a good spot to use it. I don't necessarily think it's this spot. And then with Purdy, it's going to be like, what? Purdy, Pearsall, Jennings? I mean, Jennings is going to play. Can you play him? You can play him with McCaffrey. It feels like this is not the stacking type of game. It feels like I'm either playing McCaffrey, Pearsall, maybe JSN as a one-off, maybe Kenny Walker as a one-off. I just don't think this game necessarily projects well that you should be taking like 5 pieces from it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there is some interesting, levels of just turnover that might make some of the plays interesting in this game, like Kenneth Walker, for example, as a one-off. A lot of potential hype around him. Obviously, the Seahawks bringing in a new offensive coordinator, going to be running a new kind of outside zone scheme, which Walker has had a lot of success on in the past, but the last couple of years hasn't been able to. And obviously, a lot of it comes down to health. But Niners were bottom 10 against the rush last year. They did draft 2 defensive linemen in the top 2 rounds of the draft this year, so that there's potential. Did the 49ers get significantly better against the run with that draft? Will the Seahawks be a lot better running the ball? A lot of dynamics there. The McCaffrey injury stuff is also super interesting, right? Like we're going to get an injury report today around probably 6 or 7 o'clock. That will be very interesting. I know people who drafted McCaffrey season long are probably did not sleep well last night. But McCaffrey, if he's a full go, he's probably the best projected play on the slate. Either him or Jamar Chase, right? I mean, you have to assume that they are going to work him into the pass game pretty significantly with the turnover. No Debo, obviously no Brandon Ayuk. McCaffrey stacking him with Purdy, I think is a way to do it. I think if I was stacking this game, it would be Purdy with, one of Kittle or McCaffrey, and then one of Pearsall or Juwan Jennings, or just like a cast of those guys. But I probably don't like the Darnold stack here this week. I do like Smith and Jigba, and then I do like Kenneth Walker on his own at times for a tournament play, but yeah, probably not going crazy stacking there.
Next game should be a quick one. Titans at the Broncos. Titans 17 point implied team total, the lowest on the slate. Broncos 25.5 point implied team total. On the Titans side, you got basically Cam Ward's first game up against one of the best defenses on the road. Can you play Calvin Ridley as a one-off? Sure, I guess you can. Yes. Can you play Tony Pollard? I think you're playing Pollard more on FanDuel than on DraftKings. Can you? I mean, you can. I'm not, but I mean, you can. And then on the Broncos side, we got the backfield that no one has any clue what's going on, right? R.J. Harvey, J.K. Dobbins, who knows? And then obviously Cortland Sutton's the alpha, but he's not necessarily the highest target share guy because they throw to other guys, right? They'll throw to Troy Franklin. They'll throw to obviously Evan Ingram's there now. Marvin Mims is around. I mean, the thing about stacking Bo Nix is that I think Bo Nix could get there. The thing is that maybe he gets there and no one comes along with him because the ball is just spread around. And I think one of these running backs could get there, but God to tell me which one, or it could just be both of them. One gets both. R.J. Harvey has a touchdown. J.K. Dobbins has a touchdown. Bo Nix throws for 2 touchdowns. Marvin Mims has a touchdown. Troy Franklin has a touch. Like, you get a touch. Oprah's around. You get it. Then maybe the Broncos could put up 42 points this game. They could win 42-3, and no one on the Broncos has a winning fantasy score. So, am I thinking the wrong way? Is there a way really to stack the Broncos on a slate like this that you really feel comfortable with?
Yeah, I actually like the Broncos stat quite a bit here in this one. I like it. Bo Nix to Sutton and then to Marvin Mims. I think they're going to be really low owned. And I think, we see Cortland Sutton at 15% projected ownership. That's because we are significantly higher than the public. So we'll have to bring that down just because our projection is actually elevating his ownership. I don't think he'll actually be that high. I like Sutton quite a bit. I like Marvin Mims quite a bit. There is some volatility for sure, just because, like you mentioned, they have Ingram. They're going to throw the ball to R.J. Harvey quite a bit. Troy Franklin's going to be involved. But, for us, we're projecting 28% target share for Cortland Sutton, 15% for Marvin Mims, but another 15% for Evan Ingram. So we are projecting a pretty condensed group here especially for Sutton, and then one of Mims or Evan Ingram, and they do have one of the higher implied team totals on the board. But I do think that it's just kind of gross. But Tennessee was an extreme pass funnel last year too. Great against the run, bottom 5 against the pass. So yeah, I like Denver quite a bit here.
And the Titans, are the Titans an F tier stack, or do you see a chance where Cam Ward, Ridley, and Chig? Like, is it just a cheap way? And let's truthfully, I think I prefer the Titans over the Saints stack or the Steelers stack, but I'm not sure if they get bumped up to D tier though.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to, make it clear that we like them more than the Saints and the Steelers, you could bump them into the D tier. But I think it's a tough sell. I mean, I think Denver has the best defense in football, and they certainly have one of the best secondaries and one of the best pass rushes in football. So it's a tough sell. The only thing that I think could maybe elevate them is if Cam Ward is just too good. Like, if he is just like a generational number 1 pick, then yeah, I think he'll be fine in this matchup. But it's a tough sell, going into Denver, first NFL game. So yeah, it's a pretty tough sell for me on the Titans stack here.
Okay, we got 2 more games left. Next game on the slate. When you see the 2 teams and you see the total, you would expect the ownership to go along with it, but I'm not sure it will. It's the Lions at the Packers. Lions with a 22.5 implied team total, and the Packers with a 25-point implied team total. The thing that stands out the most, and I don't know how, especially week 1 fields, it tends to be a little bit fishier, right? A little bit more dead money, because people haven't run out of their bankrolls yet. The Lions last year, their average team total was almost 30 points, right? Like, most games, they had 27-point implied team totals, 28 implied team totals. So we're used to, at these prices, playing guys like Amon-Ra and Gibbs and Montgomery and Jameson Williams and all these guys. But, dude, I mean, Miami has a higher team total. The Patriots have a higher team total than the Lions.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to limit the ownership? Because the Lions are the type of team that have ceiling. Like, if you want to play Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, or Laporta, type of stuff, you could throw in even Gibbs in there. I mean, it's kind of expensive, probably a little too expensive for a slate like this because we have guys that are cheaper. But, I mean, the Lions could go out and put up 40 points on anyone. I'm not necessarily sure in this matchup, but yeah, I'm not sure if people are just going to play like they're coming from best ball, and it's like Gibbs is going to be like 15% owned, and Amon-Ra is going to be almost 20% owned. I'm not going to play these guys at that ownership, but I mean, if these guys come in at single digit owned, I mean, I'll take a shot on the Lions, right? I mean, am I thinking otherwise, or is the team total just low enough that I shouldn't be paying these prices for them?
I don't know if you necessarily need to stack the Lions because, like, I mean, Jared Goff at 6'5", like, you're kind of paying the piper for that there. Like, you need 3-4 passing touchdowns for Jared Goff to pay off. But I mean, I think the best case scenario for a Lions player is if Christian McCaffrey ends up playing this week and Jahmyr Gibbs ends up 7-8% ownership or lower, then I think he's just a great pivot play off of CMC because I think they're pretty similar, like on a week by week basis with their ceiling. I mean, I get the question marks around the Lions, right? You know, Jared Goff has always been historically worse outdoors. And then obviously new offensive coordinator. We saw the Eagles struggle. I know maybe the rain delay impacted more of that, but they had a new offensive coordinator and their offense looked completely different. They struggled a little bit. And, you know, AJ Brown didn't have a target until the third quarter. So I think there are, you know, a new offensive coordinator, I don't think is something to necessarily take lightly, especially in week one. There might be some kinks to work out, but I wouldn't say those narratives are why I'm off of these two teams as a stack. I think it's more so just having more interest elsewhere and just the way that, you know, lineups are built. But I certainly agree that there are some one-off plays. Like I like Jacobs and Gibbs. I do think Amon-Ra is interesting. And if this were a bigger slate or like maybe one that was tougher with pricing, Isaac Tesla would be interesting at 3-1 as well. I think that would be a nice play there for a guy to potentially find the end zone at 3K.
The thing about the Packers stack is, I mean, who do you play with Jordan Love? I mean, it's always typically you only play Packers stacks when half their receiving core is injured, which typically it is all the time, and so you at least know who's going to be on the field. But I mean, if Jaden Reed is healthy, you got Reed, you got Doubs, you got Wicks, and now you got Matthew Golden in the rotation. I think Tucker Kraft at 4K is like the only like guy that you like, oh, he's going to be on the field most of the time that you could rely on, but he's also going to be owned. I think I'm with you. I think I'm putting the Packer stack in the D slot, but I definitely, you know, Josh Jacobs at 6,700 is going to be one of those running backs that I think is going to be below the top 4 owned running backs that as a pivot, I mean, it's not like he's like single digit owned, but you could make a lot more unique lineups where it's like, oh, you play a Bengals stack without Chase Brown, but instead of playing McCaffrey and Connor and Achane, you're playing Jacobs, Taylor, and someone else, and Bucky Irving, right? It's easy to make those types of lineups. So yeah, I think Josh Jacobs is my favorite play in the game, but the stacks I'm not so hot on. Let's go to the Texans at the Rams, our last game. Texans 20.25 implied team total. Rams 23.25 implied team total. We got Matthew Stafford, who I assume, is there any word on whether or not he could actually throw the ball? I mean, or move, or are we getting, because I don't know. I don't know about you, but the Rams with Puka and Devontae Adams, and then obviously Tyler Higbee, but I don't really care that much about tight end. It feels like, and then you have Kyron Williams at 6,500, not like 7,500. It feels like I know where the ball's going on the Rams, and if the Rams put up a ton of points, they got the skill position players to do so. My only concern about this game is that I think that it's going to be a slower paced game. So unless the Texans actually do something, I'm not all that enamored on the Ram stack. I think this is much more likely to be played on FanDuel than on DraftKings. But what are your thoughts on this game in general and the Ram stack? And then we'll talk about the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can kind of sum them up pretty much together because I feel pretty similarly with these two teams as I did in that last game, where I like some of these one-off pieces, but I just can't get behind either as like a full stack. I like Nico quite a bit. with no Christian Kirk this week at 7-4. Obviously, I'm always going to like Puka at 7-6. I think even Kyron and Devontae Adams are also a bit underpriced. I think both those guys are fine. Very tough matchup against Houston, but for tournament options, I think they're certainly in play. And then Jaden Higgins at 4-8 as a value play, who's going to step into a bigger role now with no Christian Kirk. I think he's also more in line for some targets now. But Nico's certainly my favorite player from this game. He should be much more popular than he is if he's going to only come in at this 13%. I know it's difficult to get to him because of the other guys in that price range and the spend up options, but he certainly deserves to be, amongst the top owned players of the week, especially with the amount of targets he's likely to have in the matchup.
Yeah, based on our sim tool, Stroud actually has a higher chance of being optimal than Stafford. Stafford 1.23%, Stroud 3.37%. And yeah, if Christian Kirk's out, like Stroud is 6K, and you pair him with Nico at 7,400 and Higgins 4,800. You can even triple and put Dalton Schultz at 3,500.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost feel like you play. Are the Texans a sneaky stack? I'm looking at this ownership and I'm like, yeah, it's a low total. I mean, 20.25 is low, but I mean, we've seen games where the Texans go behind 2 touchdowns and Stroud puts up, does the Blake Bortles and puts up 350 yards in comeback mode, and we kind of know where the ball is going. Are the Texans really a B tier stack at this ownership?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could kind of see it as well. I mean, you also think about the lack of Joe Mixon effect, right? I mean, 2 years ago is Stroud's rookie year with no Joe Mixon. They were throwing the ball a ton. Obviously, I know they have Nick Chubb here, but Nick Chubb's not the same guy he used to be. So they could easily turn to a much more pass-heavy approach. They got the new offensive coordinator from the Sean McVay tree, so I'm sure he'll be looking to show off some stuff against his former role model across the other sideline. So yeah, I like the Texans a little bit more talking to it. I mean, I've liked Nico and Jaden Higgins quite a bit even before this, but yeah, so why not also just throw in CJ Stroud there?
Right. I'm just moving them up a tier. They'd naturally be a C tier, right? C team tier, but because of ownership, up to B. And as to commemorate John Breslin, we have to do the OCD thing of evening out the tiers. So we're automatically assuming that you'd rather play the Titans stack over the Steelers and the Saints, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving that up. Okay, and then out of the D tier teams, if you had a choice between playing any one of the D tier teams, which one would you rather play? The Raiders stack, the Cardinals stack? Remember, we're talking about stacks. Giants stack, Jets stack, Seahawks stack, Packers stack, or Titans stack?
Out of that group, I guess it'd be Arizona.
And also, remember, consider ownership as well. I mean, not just...
Yeah, out of that group, it'd be Arizona for me.
Okay. So that gets us even, right? So it's all symmetrical, right? So we do that on behalf of John Breslin. Kyle, any other thoughts overall on the slate for GPPs on DraftKings?
No, I think we did a good job breaking it down. I think I got all my thoughts out. I appreciate going through that with you.
Yep, and you got other content up on the site other than being part of our amazing projections team?
Yeah, did the Sunday best article. So that is either out or is coming out today. So that one was fun to do, break down all the tiers for both sites. And then all the projection updates and whatnot. And then, then just some props and stuff. So make sure you're checking those out as well.
Okay. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. You know how much I like the thummy thumbs. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to always know when we go live. We got tons of shows today, live shows, recorded shows. We got Sundays, Sunday morning. Make sure you tune in early in the morning. We got a whole block of shows from like 9:30, 10 o'clock on, leading up until lock. They'll fill you in with all the inactives, with tournament strategy, with weather, with everything. So definitely tune in this season to RotoGrinders. And as always, go get a premium subscription to RotoGrinders to use all of our tools for this NFL season and NBA and NHL and college football and MMA and PGA. And we got everything here. So go to rotogrinders.com/premium and get a monthly package. It's a 6 monthly package. We're running specials all the time. We got SimLabs. We got things that are broken down. It's not that expensive, right? But it's definitely worth it. So click on the link in the description for that. And I'll see you next week talking about NFL GPP strategy, as always, for the Sunday slate on RotoGrinders Today.